Hi there, everyone. Hi, Hannah. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. So, Alex and Anja, we see that you're online. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to let everyone know that we're recording this session, and we will publish the recording and the presentation as soon as possible, hopefully tomorrow, but definitely this week. So thank you for tuning in to hear about this webinar about Lake Champlain Sea Grant and Vermont Water Center undergraduate internship and graduate fellowship opportunities. My name is Juliana White, and I'm the research coordinator for the Lake Champlain Sea Grant and the Vermont Water Resources and Lake Studies Center. The Sea Grant is a federal university partnership that supports coastal and Great Lakes communities through research, education, and extension. With funding from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, Sea Grant aims to enhance the practical use and conservation of coastal, marine, and Great Lakes resources in order to create a sustainable economy and a sustainable environment. The Lake Champlain Sea Grant is hosted by the University of Vermont and SUNY Plattsburgh. The Vermont Water Resources and Lake Studies Center is one of 54 national institutes for water resources. With funding from the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, the Vermont Water Center, hosted by the University of Vermont, addresses priority local water-related concerns through applied research, education, training, and outreach. Today, we'll hear from Chris Stepanuk, Lake Champlain Sea Grant Assistant Director and Extension Leader, about undergraduate opportunities in the Lake Champlain Basin. I will then provide a quick summary of one undergraduate fellowship and several graduate fellowships that are currently open. Hannah Lachance, a recent MS grad who will begin her Knauss Fellowship next month, will share advice regarding the Knauss application process and describe how placements are done. Following Hannah, Kristin Raub, who's a PhD candidate in natural resources and a Knauss alumna, will share her Knauss Fellowship experience, allowing us all to better understand the range of experience that this prestigious fellowship can offer. We'll wind up with questions and provide more information on application processes if there is time. So I should let you all know that Kristin and I are speaking to you from the University of Vermont, and Hannah is attending virtually. Thank you to the presenters for participating today. So Chris is gonna jump into the driver's seat here.
Thanks, Juliana. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. So Juliana asked if I would share information about the internships that we have available through Lake Champlain Sea Grant. So every semester we have a number of watershed education interns. Those are undergraduates. Most of the time they're from the University of Vermont, but for those Burlington area colleges and universities, we also hire students from other colleges and universities, and we've also had students from, in the past, Green Mountain College who have been interns. And so these interns are working with our Watershed Alliance program. They receive training each week. They work in the lab, as well as having opportunities to work with classrooms, middle and high school classrooms around the Lake Champlain Basin. We also have students as of this year who are hired for watershed education through SUNY Plattsburgh. So we have students from different places who are these educators. They, again, receive training, and then they work with local classrooms, and they go out and they teach younger students how to do stream monitoring. Physical, chemical, and biological aspects of stream health are what they are taught to teach, and then they go out and do that teaching. And then we also have summer internships. And so I just put 4 examples of the types of summer internships that we have. We have one long-term lawn care research project, which you can see in the top 2 pictures on the right, where we have, at this point, we have about 7 business sites where we have students who are maintaining the lawn at 2 plots at each business site, mowing to different heights, and then measuring a number of different parameters about water infiltration, soil health, grass health. And so we'll have that position being posted in the next couple of weeks for this coming summer. And if it's a student who can maintain that into the fall, that's also fantastic, since that goes right on through the growing season. We also have a shoreline protection intern that we hire in partnership with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. So that position will be posted again in a few weeks. They work with the LakeWise program to do shoreline erosion control and home site assessments. We also have a clean boating intern who, again, will be posting in the next few weeks. This intern will work out at marinas, trying to get educational materials out to the marinas and talking with recreational boaters about best practices to ensure the health of Lake Champlain. And then we have a green infrastructure intern that works with our green infrastructure collaborative program, helping to prepare materials for meetings and fact sheets about the benefits of these green infrastructure practices that slow down and treat stormwater on site. So keep your eyes peeled. We post these jobs generally through the University of Vermont, the jobs board, the student jobs board. If students are from SUNY Plattsburgh, Nate Trachty is our staff person there who would be posting the positions. And if I'm not sure where folks are from, but if you're from another campus, contact Juliana and we can let you know when we post the positions, so they are open to any students from any campus in the basin. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Chris. And I do encourage just a few people online, but if you do have questions about the undergraduate internship, just pop them into the group chat and we'll see them. So what I'm going to do is just quickly go through several different opportunities that are currently open. This first one is for undergraduates and the rest are for graduate students. So we recently, through the Sea Grant and the Vermont Water Center, we recently learned about a Virginia Tech research and extension experience for undergraduates. And this is, application is due February 15th. It's for a 9-week summer program in which they bring together people from a lot of students and experienced professionals from a lot of different disciplines to solve and work on different research questions. The program is paid $500 per week and they provide housing and meals. Transportation will depend, the transportation support will depend on who they get, how many people they get and from where. And I encourage you to follow through by looking at the website below. So as in terms of the graduate fellowships, these first two are something that they both go through the Sea Grant system and they both happen annually. As I mentioned earlier, both Hannah and Kristin are Knauss Marine Policy Fellows. And so we'll talk a lot about the Marine Policy Fellowship experience. What I'd like to point out to you here is that the final applications are due February 21st. We do have an opportunity to review the applications that are turned in by January 15th, but after that we can't review it because it's a national program and we need to be fair across the system. So January 5th, if you're interested in applying, if you apply by January 15th, sending that to me, we can review and provide some feedback. If you can't make that deadline, don't worry, you can still apply by February 21st. I'm not going to talk much more about what the Knauss Fellowship does because we're going to talk about that later. So the Coastal Management and Digital Coast Fellowship is actually 9 different fellowships, 6 in coastal management and 3 in digital coast. And at the end of this presentation, which will be posted, is a list of those 9 fellowships. Those 9 fellowships are also listed on our website at uvm.edu/Sea Grant, and you'll see under research and fellowships where to go. These are 1-year fellowships, or sorry, 2-year fellowships starting in August 2020 and going to August 2022. They are also due January 17th in a mere 10 days, in case you are interested. So through Sea Grant, there are National Marine Fisheries Service Sea Grant Fellowships in Population and Ecosystem Dynamics and in Marine Resource Economics. These are actually PhD degree programs, and they provide 2 to 3 years of funding for salary, living expenses, tuition, and you would apply after you're already accepted into a PhD program, and it would require participation of your major professor or advisor. So information about the marine fisheries fellowships is available on our website. These are due January 30th. So on to the next column. through the National Water Center. So we're connected through the Vermont Water Centers. They offer a summer institute focusing on coupled inland coastal hydraulics, scaling hydrologic and hydraulic models for small basins to regional watersheds, and utilizing hydroinformatics to address flood inundation. These are for incoming graduate students and postdocs within 3 years of graduating. It's a smaller application process, but it's due January 15th. Information for this is on both the Water Center and the Sea Grant website to kind of make it easier for people to find those. 2 recent opportunities came out of California. One is a Sea Grant Kelp Management Fellow, and the other is through the Sea Grant Extension Fellowship. It's a marine debris program in Oakland, California. I'm not going to go over these, but you'll see the websites in both cases. They're both being hired through the University of California at San Diego. They are. Well, no, sorry. These 2 are not posted on our website. They are through the links that are provided there. And I will try to pop on just a little mention of these with a direct link out. So if you're there, you can see it. That's a great idea. So next up is Hannah Lachance. And Hannah, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about your experience. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So I'm Hannah Lachance. I recently finished my master's in June at the University of Vermont. And I actually did my bachelor's at UVM as well and worked in between my bachelor's and my master's. And I'm currently working on Lake Ontario with USGS. It's a nice kind of excellent opportunity with field work, and I get to learn a lot. Unfortunately, I'm leaving soon. Well, unfortunately, but also really excited because I'm leaving to go become a 2020 Knauss Marine Policy Fellow. So kind of a little bit of what intrigued me about this fellowship. I actually came to this info session last year, kind of curious about one of the other fellowships. But then when I heard about this fellowship, I became intrigued. And then I actually remembered that somebody I knew on Twitter was a fellow. And so I reached out to her, not knowing her at all, but reaching out and being like, hey, I see that you're this fellow. Can I learn a little bit more about it? Because my background is not in marine or policy. I'm a freshwater fish biologist. And before that, I was an animal scientist doing a lot of lab research. But my interests are conservation and restoration. And I realized that policy is an important part of kind of taking leaps in those areas. So I knew that it was something I wanted to learn a little bit more about. And so I saw this fellowship as an opportunity to do so. And after talking to a lot of previous fellows, this fellowship is designed to give people that opportunity. You do not have to come into it knowing the whole marine ecosystem or knowing anything about policy. You obviously kind of have to explain why you're interested and how this fellowship can help you with your career goals, which I'll talk about in a second. But basically, it's a wonderful opportunity. Everyone I've talked to who's been a fellow has only good things to say, and I'm sure Kristin will continue to, praise the fellowship. But basically, I thought people were exaggerating, but no, it just comes with so many wonderful opportunities, like traveling opportunities. You're placed in a specific position through the fellowship. So you can either be part of an executive or legislative office, and I chose executive, and that means that I could be placed at any one of these federal agencies. NOAA, each year different host offices apply to have a fellow. There's a lot through NOAA, but NOAA is huge. There's so many different parts of NOAA. And then there's the Department of the Interior with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. There's a fellow usually each year at the White House. There's a fellow in the Pentagon working with the Navy. So it's a really wide range of what you could be doing for your job during your fellowship year. But even as a fellow, there's other opportunities to just kind of gain experience from being in DC and having these types of opportunities near you. So I think something else is depending on the position, you may or may not be attending congressional briefings through your job, but even if your job doesn't require that or have that as a part, you could still, ask your mentor to let you go. And they're usually very open to letting you partake in these kinds of opportunities. So anyways, I won't talk too much because I know we've still got more to go, but I'll talk a little bit about the application process, and then I'll talk a little bit more about placement week after this. So honestly, I applied last year not knowing a ton about what went into a good application. So I pretty much followed the instructions, and that was pretty helpful. But now that I've applied and I've seen the comments back from my application, I kind of went through and see what they found interesting about my application. And that's what is on the screen right now, what the tips I have. So basically, you really should clearly explain how you see this fellowship not only being important to you and your career goals, but also how maybe you can help match or fulfill with the goal of this fellowship. Even though you could be placed in a range of different positions, it is through the National Sea Grant Office. So what I did was I went to their website, kind of saw what their mission was, and explained how my research, my interests, my experiences kind of match and align with their mission, and how I could continue to, bring my expertise to their goals, to their mission. And then, as I said earlier, kind of what drew me to the fellowship was that I did not have this background, but I wanted to gain that background, because whether I stay in policy after this fellowship or take what I've learned and bring it back to research or some other area, my ultimate goals are to be the best person I can to reach conservation and restoration, solutions. And I saw this as an excellent way for me to be able to learn and grow and take these skills and apply them. And so I think they're looking for a combination of passion, a little bit of a direct purpose, but honestly, I have no idea what my end career goal is. So you don't have to have that specifically laid out. You just have to know where you want in general for your career to go and how this fellowship could help. But I would say most of all, what people found intriguing about my application, but also during placement week when they were interviewing me, was the non-specific graduate school skills. Like, everyone who's applying for this is in some sort of higher education, whether it's graduate school or law school. And so listing those achievements and experiences is important, but honestly, it's the things outside of that you do that people were really intrigued by. So for me, a lot of them latched onto the fact that I have an interest and a little bit of experience in scientific communication. And so scientific communication can be anything from running a social media account for a program, or I ran it for our Rubenstein Ecosystem Science Lab down at the waterfront when I was a graduate student. I also just was able to communicate science to a broad range of audiences. So I taught elementary school for a little bit in between my bachelor's and master's, and so that's one way that I communicated science differently. I also take my specific genetics work that I did in my master's and conveyed it to fisheries managers in a way that they could understand and apply that research. And that is a big deal to these, not just this application, but other applications. So I'm not saying you have to have scientific communication experience, but even just having an interest in gaining that was something that a lot of these programs were interested in. So, that's not specifically related to my master's, but it is something that is important. So list those things. If you're part of some sort of a club, if you help start a club, if you've got leadership experience, if you have something that shows them that you take initiative and see things through beyond graduate work, that's important. So showing those kinds of things. And one last anecdote before we move on to placement week. When I applied, I didn't include a major leadership experience on my application, but it came out during my interview with the Lake Champlain Sea Grant office, and they were like, how come you didn't include this? This is great. And I just hadn't thought to. So basically, include those kinds of things that maybe are outside your academic CV. Okay, so we'll move on to talk about placement week a little bit now. So once you apply, you have to wait a couple months to hear. And I think it was around mid-June that I heard. And when you hear, you're listed as a finalist. And that is basically just a way of saying that you're pretty much gonna be a fellow, but you're not officially called a fellow until you are placed with the host office. So like I said, you can be executive or legislative, and those are 2 different placement weeks. Only like 14 people are going to be the legislative branch, and the rest of us are executive. But like I said, the positions within the executive branch can range widely. So you could be in a position that has you on Capitol Hill every single day, or you can have a position that still focuses, like there's the Office of Ocean Exploration, so you're still kind of a little bit more in like more of a research side of things. So this is a great week to kind of learn about those opportunities, interview with the offices, stay open-minded, and then by the end of the week, you know where you're going to go. So one of the fellows told me that this week is the most fun you never want to have again, which like makes it sound a little ominous, but it's not. It's because it's such a cool opportunity to hear about all the wonderful work that is being done at all these different offices. And it makes you want to work at every single one of them. So the good news is that no matter what position you get placed at, it's going to be a good one because there's just so many wonderful opportunities. So this week you come, you learn about the different host offices by listening to a bunch of different PowerPoints on the first day. And then you schedule your interviews. You can interview for 15 to 18 is what they limited us to, but that's still like a lot of interviews, and you travel all over the DC area to interview with these offices. There's networking events in the evenings, and they're not required, but I would highly recommend, and they highly recommend that you attend them because that is where a lot of the connections with the offices happen outside of the interviews. Now, I will just state quickly that the host offices change every year, and you are not allowed to contact the host offices ahead of time. Like if you really want to work for one, you might be, you might be drawn to be like, oh, let me reach out to them ahead of time to let them know I'm interested, but you absolutely cannot do that. So a lot of your interactions have to be within this placement week, and they have to be within the structure that they provide. So, but there's plenty of opportunity to interact with them and learn from the fellows, from the offices, etc. So, so you do a ton of interviews, and then you kind of narrow it down, and the host offices are narrowing it down, and then they list who they rank the fellows to be their, 1 through whatever choices. And then if you're listed number 1 on your top office, let's say, you get to go and say, yes, I want to be part of this office. And then you cross yourself off the other lists. And then everyone eventually kind of gets to choose their office. You call their office, everyone's excited because they're happy to get a fellow, you're happy to be their fellow, and then you get to celebrate with your new cohort of fellows. So this is just an example of how it went for my cohort. It changes a little bit every year, but it is a really great week to learn about all the offices and then get excited about your new placement. So I think I had it on the first slide, but I don't know if I mentioned it. My position is I'm going to be the International Fisheries Science Specialist with NOAA Fisheries in their Office of Science and Technology. So I get to work with a bunch of different people on international agreements with Norway and China and a bunch of other places to make sure that we're sharing science. So that's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to my fellowship year. All right, well, I will pass the mic over to Kristin.
All right, hello. I'm Kristin Raub. I am currently a PhD candidate in natural resources at UVM. I was a 2016 Knauss Marine Policy Fellow. I was a little bit more traditional. My background for undergrad, I was a marine science major, followed by a master's in oceanography, and then another master's in environmental economics. So I was a little bit interdisciplinary, but I was also motivated to join this fellowship because I wanted to gain policy experience, not that I already had it. So I really saw this as like a launching point and a way to get my feet wet and really understand what the options were. And I'm going to spend a long time raving about this fellowship because seriously, it's like the best thing out there. I think Hannah pretty much covered the Knauss placement week process. It's intense. I think I had 15 interviews in 3 days. I recommend if you're a girl, bring flats. You're running all over DC. It's great. You meet a lot of people. It's exhausting, but it's a fantastic week. Similar for Knauss application advice, I am actually currently a graduate writing consultant with a writing center. So I now have a lot of input and thought on how an application should go. So just a little word, if you're at UVM, the graduate writing center is available. Other universities probably also have a writing center. So it's a really great resource to like vet and have somebody else check your work. My general advice now is definitely, you don't have to be a marine policy person, but you need to explain how it will advance your career. I believe generally starting with a story, you really with an application, you want to give somebody a good idea of kind of who you are as a well-rounded person, like give them as much detail as possible. So sometimes when you're working with somebody, like I just read an application where somebody brought you with a little story about how they were laying in a hammock in some tropical country after giving medical care, and that's why they wanted to be a doctor. It just really kind of introduces, not always, but it could be a good strategy. Generally, show, don't tell. Don't tell me that you're intelligent or a leader. Show me with examples. So lots of detail. Give me as much as you can. Have really clear career goals. And I believe in intent in an application. You don't just want to make it seem like your career is whatever, I'm just applying. So like a personal thesis statement, like, you know, if you're in research, you have a research question that kind of helps drive your whole thing. So mine is always, I'm interdisciplinary. I want to work between science and policy. Kind of what is your vibe? And then make sure everything ties back to it. So you have a nice, clear, cohesive narrative. And then really explain why you need the fellowship and how it's going to help you reach your goals. Because again, not everybody comes from a perfect background. And I think quite honestly, they really like it when you don't. Like when I went there, they were most excited about my econ background, not my marine science, because everybody's got some version of a love of lakes or oceans or something. They want to know what kind of sets you apart. And I think it was my interdisciplinary thinking and that kind of outside bit that really helped. And then I also believe in a strong closer, something that really like solidifies, this is a summary of who I am. This is what you're doing. Anyway, there's lots of advice out there. This is my general ones. I'd be happy to speak with anybody personally about these further, or specifically you can make an appointment with me at the writing center or find your own writing center as well. So I mentioned I was a 2016 fellow. I had a joint position, a few offices you'll work for actually 2 at a time. I was with the Coastal States Organization, which is an NGO, and also with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Institute for Water Resources. And I should note, Coastal States Organization still hosts a fellow, but I think they are currently joint with EPA, which is actually kind of awesome. I'm a little jealous of that one. So I did quite a lot for the year, and I really struggled with what even to say. I traveled so much and had so many different experiences, and I think that was what the greatest thing was. I think something I didn't realize going in is when you're a fellow, just the name itself carries a lot of weight. It's, you go through this such extreme vetting process, and this fellowship has such a long history that like just the name Knauss Fellow like gives you, it's like, it's a learning experience, but you also get a lot of responsibility. You can do as much or as little as you want with a year, and you can learn quite a bit. So as I mentioned, Coastal States Organization, this is an NGO, so they're not in the federal government. So they kind of have this weird, unique position where I really liked being able to work for somebody not in the federal government and then in conjunction with a federal agency to see what power one could have versus the other. So here I did a lot of different projects, and some of them were handed to me, and then some of them I was able to develop myself. So this project, the Community Rating System Green Guide, was a project that the prior fellow to me had started to develop, and then I took over from them. So this was working with the National Flood Insurance Program's Community Rating System, which is sort of a merit-based system where if you do these certain best practices, you can get reductions in your flood insurance premiums. So this was focusing on the green elements. We worked with the ASFPM, the Association of State Floodplain Managers. And we did a lot of interviews with on-the-ground communities about how they're working to reduce flood damage, et cetera. So it was like this really great opportunity to kind of see how these national level policies also get worked down. And now this is a published document that's available online, and my name's attached to it, which is really great. So things carry over afterwards. Then I personally developed a project. I call it the Coastal Toolkit Project. So I was facilitator of the Adaptation Working Group at Coastal States Organization. And there I just heard all of this talk about, oh, there's so many tools and we're not really using them, and why is this? So then I developed a project where I did a series of interviews to see what is happening, how is coastal resilience really working on the ground, why aren't people using these tools? And then I developed this into a white paper, which then actually became the first chapter of my dissertation and is now a published document, which is great. So then I mentioned I also worked for Army Corps' Institute for Water Resources. And this is sort of, they call it like the water think tank, but I say think tank in big quotes for the course. This is really looking at water damage, anything with like water related resources of Army Corps. And here I did a lot of projects as well, but the one I'm most proud of is from my work as a PhD student, I had a lot of complex systems work. So I pitched doing a social network analysis of the SAGE program, which is systems approach to geomorphic engineering. So I was trying to, it's a really national diverse program, and they were kind of having maybe not the most smooth communications. So I sent out a survey and developed this project and actually mapped out how the communications is working, which developed into a poster, which I presented at a conference. And that was really influential in helping them kind of improve their communication across this national program. So again, you can have projects handed to you, but then you can also develop your own. And it's sort of like they give you as much authority and responsibility as you want to take. So it's a really awesome opportunity to kind of learn anything that you want to learn. And then other stuff, the list could go on and on. Just because you're in one department, you're in a cohort of fellows that are all across the federal government. So a lot of different departments will host days like Department of the Interior Day, where they get a bunch of different people to come and give you a presentation about what they do and how you can get connected. They do a lot of professional development opportunities, like a sharing science workshop and planning effective projects and networking 101. Like, you get to go to Capitol Hill's Ocean Week oftentimes if you want. You also have this really awesome professional development fund. So sort of whatever you don't spend on health insurance and moving yourself to and from DC, you get to spend basically however you want to. So I personally chose to travel a whole lot, and that was sort of a personal decision, but I got to go to so many different conferences and meetings and check out different offices. I also got to go to the Netherlands for a conference, which was amazing. So it's just anyway, I rave about it a long time, but it's just, there's so many different opportunities. No two people's experiences will look the same, but everybody's going to rave about it. So sort of whatever you want to get out of this is there for the taking. So it's really fantastic. And then as a summary, really what you take away from this is if you don't know policy, by the end of it, you're going to have a very firm understanding of how policy operates at international, national, regional, state, local levels, and kind of where you see yourself in the future. It's just a really great way to understand everything in a very short amount of time. And quite honestly, I wish the fellowship were more than a year. It's a lot to pack in. And anyways, that concludes my rave. Any questions?
Yeah. I think I'll, yeah. Thank you, Chris, Hannah, and Kristin. It's kind of exciting just to listen to how excited, how much Kristin did and the opportunities that await Hannah and other people who will do this fellowship. So if there are questions, the people who are online, feel free to unmute yourself and ask or send something to the group chat. In the meantime, I just wanted to share with the people who are online and who will be watching afterwards that I'm not going to go through the rest of the slides because of the time, but I did want to show that much of this information is already online and available to you, but I summarized some of the important information about placements for Knauss, the application timeline, other tips. I think you heard great ones from both Hannah and Kristin today, and this kind of pulled together what we had for tips in the past, and we will update those tips soon. How the Knauss application is scored, and again, this is part of the description of the opportunity, but there's a lot of information out there, so I tried to summarize it for you. Here are the 9 coastal management and digital coast projects. These are available on our website. You'll see that you can go from Guam to the Virgin Islands to Rhode Island. So it covers a wide expanse of territory. And again, here's the application timeline for the coastal management and digital coast fellowships, as well as the criteria. So let's see, nobody has sent in a question yet. I think what we'll do is just wait 30 more seconds, and then we'll thank everyone and sign off for the day. Unless, yeah, so that's what our plan will be. There we go. All right. Super. So thank you again, Hannah, and we'll wave to you. And thanks again to Kristin and Chris. Have a good day, everyone.
One final thing, if you don't mind, is
yes, please.
You are welcome to reach out to me. I'm I won't speak for Kristin, but probably her too, where
Kristin
if
is
you,
saying, well,
yeah, so seriously, feel free to reach out to me. Juliana can connect us. I will be starting my fellowship soon, but I've already, like placement week, I learned a lot. Kristin's already done the fellowship, but I am more than happy to talk about these opportunities or answer any questions if you have any. So please reach out.
Thank you, Hannah. And just how you said that you reached out to a former Knauss fellow in preparing your application, it does seem a critical, helpful step. Kristin is saying that she's also available, and she also reached out to a previous fellow to gain insight. And my email is right here, so please email me if you would like, and I can connect you with Kristin and Hannah, or with Chris if you're interested in undergraduate fellowships. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Goodbye.